In the 3 years since my union with Shen Shengwen, every aspect of my being, both within and without, has been attended to by him. Hitherto, I had deemed this a manifestation of his affection for me, until my sister, having divorced, returned to the motherland. Gazing at my reflection in the mirror, I realized that I was not but a surrogate clutching the physical examination report. I resolved to spend my final days living like a thorn, one that would embed itself in Shen Shengwen's heart and cause him to rue it for the remainder of his days. 3 years of matrimony have elapsed without any sign of a child, and I am consumed with anxiety. Little did I anticipate that during a medical examination, I would be diagnosed with uterine cancer, and in its intermediate stage no less. When apprised of the diagnosis, my colleagues at the hospital endeavored to console me. Pray, do not overly distress yourself. Dr. Shen is an authority in this domain. He shall surely find a solution. Would you like me to summon Dr. Shen and inform him of the situation? To have Shen Shengwen come hither? He could scarcely manage himself. In his haste, he would be at a loss as to what to do when he ventured out. I took the report, shook my head and said to my colleague, could you assist me in closing the file first? I wished to return home and convey the news to him myself. Picking up my phone, I was suddenly reminded of my parents, who had accompanied my sister abroad 3 years prior. Despite being their child, they had always been cold and indifferent towards me. In the face of illness, I still yearned to hear their voices. However, when I activated my phone and beheld my WeChat moments, which I had not even had the opportunity to exit, my sister's update displayed an intimate photograph of her and Shen Shengwen, accompanied by the caption, I am returning to the country today, and my heart skipped a beat. Sister is returning to the country today? It was my brother-in-law who had fetched me at the airport, yet my own sister was oblivious? I was perturbed and hastily dialed Shen Shengwen's number, only to have him hang up. When I called again, his phone was switched off. I was in a daze and left the hospital in a stupor, departing work early. Had Shen Shengwen only encountered my sister once? Why had he absented himself from work to greet the plane? I took the report and sat there for several hours, awaiting a call from Shen Shengwen and my sister. I obsessively scrolled through Shen Shengwen and my sister's moments. I discovered that my sister had hitherto restricted her moments to a select few, but now I could peruse the entire content. Those familiar habiliments, the identical makeup countenance. I hastened to the lavatory and regarded myself in the mirror. I seized the skincare products on the sink and hurled them at the mirror. It transpires that Shen Shengwen had been exceedingly solicitous towards me over the past 3 years, personally overseeing every detail, both within and without, and for no other reason than to adorn me in the likeness of his sister, so that he could behold me and be reminded of her. The felicitous marriage I had anticipated had turned out to be a charade, with me serving as a substitute paramour. This person was none other than my sister, before whom I had been compelled to defer in all matters since childhood. I loathe. Why are you not yet asleep? When Shen Shengwen opened the door, I espied the smile at the corner of his mouth, which was the most congenial and blissful I had ever witnessed. That was the first effulgent smile I had beheld on his visage after 3 years of wedlock. Not for me. This smile was reserved for my dear sister. I am awaiting you. I approached him, clutching the report. I am still youthful and have no desire to perish. My husband is an expert in oncology, and I had placed all my hopes in him. Intermediate stage of uterine cancer. As a nurse, I am acutely aware that if the delay persists, the optimal treatment would entail the removal of the uterus, and I might never be able to bear children in this lifetime. When Shen Shengwen approached and habitually proffered me his coat, I discerned traces of lipstick on his suit jacket. Did I not instruct you to dine by yourself first? I imbibed a trifle too much and must therefore repair to the lavatory first. Shen Shengwen extended his arms and embraced me, then pivoted and made for the bathroom. The hospital report in my hand was knocked to the ground. Shen Shengwen did not glance back. It was as if I were standing there, compelled to mimic all my sister's habits, awaiting his acknowledgement. I returned to the bed and reclined. When he emerged from the shower and enfolded me in his arms, he inquired, "What was it you wished to convey just now?" Shen Shengwen murmured in my ear, his low tone still cold and detached, like a haughty individual who is invariably aloof, noble and arrogant. I opened my mouth and said, "Sister, have you returned?" Shen Shengwen's hand ceased its motion, and he released me. The warm support from my back vanished in an instant. "Xiao Qiao, I beseech you not to inquire about this further. Let us leave it at that. Is that agreeable? Is that all? Which manner? Aménage à trois?" I pressed my aching abdomen and realized that my previous supplications had all been in vain. His candor was more wounding than his silence. He takes my love for granted, without any expectation of reciprocation. Consequently, I have now become a marionette in Shen Shengwen's eyes, docile and manipulable. After all, only dolls are entirely unresisting. "Go to sleep," I said softly, distinctly hearing Shen Shengwen exhale behind me. When I awoke in the morning, I did not prepare his attire and breakfast as was my wont, nor did I apply makeup or perfume as I had been doing for the past 3 years. I donned the jeans and shirt from the bottom of the cabinet, and proceeded to the second affiliated hospital in the city for a comprehensive examination. "Madam, did you not bring a family member?" the doctor inquired regarding me. I shook my head and said, "It is of no consequence. I am aware that I have cancer. You may apprise me of the situation directly." The doctor was visibly embarrassed. Finally, after my persistent insistence, he said, "The issue at present is that you are not merely afflicted with cancer. You are also with child. I have just studied the location of the lesion, and it is most unfavorable. If you undergo surgery now, you may be unable to bear children in the future." When I exited the hospital with the diagnosis in hand, my legs were numb and feeble. I could scarcely credit that the babe I had been striving to conceive for 3 years would arrive at this juncture. My thoughts were in turmoil as I caressed my abdomen. After a protracted interval, I retrieved my phone and dialed. When my mother answered the call, my heart rate doubled. "Mom, what is the matter?" The indifferent demeanor persisted as ever. At that time, my mother felt that I had a closer rapport with my grandmother, and did not know how to cleave to her. I was not as astute as my sister. I had been a prodigious dancing talent in my youth. She resolutely left me in the countryside and took my sister to study dancing in the city center. During my high school and college years, my parents bade me reside in the dormitory. After graduating from college, I scarcely returned home save during the Chinese New Year. I could not abide the sensation of indifference and neglect. All the tastes in the house were tailored to my sister's palate. I was required to retire at 9 o'clock and prohibited from speaking whilst dining. My mother would not chastise me. She would merely regard me with cold reproach until I took the initiative to admit my error. "Mom, if I were to commit an act now that would inadvertently imperil my life, what should I do?" My mother replied calmly from the other end of the line. "Did you err? You are an adult. An adult is responsible for their own decisions." On the other side of the phone, I suddenly heard my father's voice. "Who is it?" My mother said. "No one, just continue watching TV." "Very well, if there is naught else, I shall terminate the call first." I listened to the busy signal, and a frigid chill enveloped my entire being. In this winter, the only source of warmth I could sense was that emanating from my lower abdomen. I laughed, my eyes reddened. "Baby, I shall not forsake you. You are the last kin in my world who can bestow warmth upon me." I had been dwelling in a frigid family since childhood. I had been yearning for warmth, and thus when Shan Shengwen proffered me a family, I married without hesitation. I returned to work at the hospital and pushed open the door to Dr. Shan Shengwen's office. I was caught unawares and beheld Shan Shengwen clasping my sister's hand. Her comely countenance was somewhat pallid, yet her makeup was exquisitely applied. She smiled upon seeing me. "Xiao Qiao, are you here?" But I stared intently at the two individuals entwined without uttering a word. Shan Shengwen released my sister's hand uncomfortably. "Your sister was experiencing some discomfort just now. I was merely tending to her. Pray do not overthink it." What he said. Heh. My abdomen ached slightly as I listened to the footsteps outside. I hummed softly, not desiring to become the subject of others' gossip. "My sister, Su Wan, is exceedingly beautiful and gentle, but only I am cognizant that she is extremely jealous. Whenever I was at home, she would implore our mother to prepare only green vegetables and tofu because she was endeavoring to lose weight. She would also request our mother to accompany her shopping for dancing shoes and bid me report to school alone. Xiao Qiao, you truly have not altered in the slightest over the years." "Nay." My sister approached me, smiled and took my arm. "You have become even more comely." My beauty was entirely the result of Shan Shengwen's ministrations, tailored to his predilections. This statement was like a dagger piercing my heart. I instinctively recoiled, but my sister tumbled due to my movement. "Su Wan." I endeavored to extend my hand to assist her, but Shan Shengwen pushed me aside. Observing him nervously shielding my sister, I suddenly felt a twinge in my stomach. I cannot countenance Shan Shengwen in such a state, and I have no desire to witness it again. I pivoted and hastened to the bathroom, whereupon I discovered that I was bleeding. Without a second thought, I retrieved my phone and dialed Shan Shengwen. I clutched my stomach and trembled as I said, "Oh, and my stomach aches." "It is of no import. You go attend to Xiao Qiao." When I heard my sister's words from the other end of the line, I suddenly felt it was utterly ludicrous. My husband had come to tend to me, and now he required her consent? I donned my clothes and called my bosom friend. In less than 10 minutes my best friend was awaiting me at the entrance of the hospital. After hearing of my recent tribulations, my best friend Zhang Qiao was incensed. "Nay, Xiao Qiao, you cannot bear a child in your current state. You are all aware that Shan Shengwen's heart is no longer with you. Why do you still endeavor to bear his child? Is not your life of greater import? By a fortuitous coincidence, this child may be the only being in the world who loves me." Moreover, the doctor averred that the risk of surgery for my condition is exceedingly high, and the probability of success is extremely low. Even if I were to abandon it, I might not survive. I touched my abdomen, lowered my head, and suppressed my sorrowful tears. "I love you." Xiao Qiao directly enfolded me in her arms and wept. "Su Qiao, consider it as if I were imploring you not to act thus. Abort the child and seek conservative treatment. There are myriad men. If this one fails, we shall seek another. I aspire to be your oldest and dearest friend, and I do not wish any harm to befall you. Let us pretend that we made a pact to frequent the disco in 30 years. I regarded the rearview mirror, my sallow cheeks and darkened lips, and nodded tremulously. Yes, why should I hazard my life on this account? Xiao Qiao promptly made arrangements for me, and escorted me to the second affiliated hospital, to seek the finest gynecologist. When the other party heard of my condition, they reached the same conclusion as before, stating that it was perilous and required further deliberation. I handed over the medical records to the doctor, and awaited outside with Xiao Qiao. Xiao Qiao continuously clasped my hand, trembling even more violently than I. I laughed at her. "Are you so afeard that I shall depart? Fear not. You said you adored the fried tofu I prepared most. I shall endure until you are old and toothless and shall prepare fried tofu for you." Xiao Qiao. I pivoted and beheld my sister standing there. Why had she come? Had Shan Shengwen dispatched her? Shengwen's mobile phone was left with me. I overheard his friend, the doctor, calling him, and then I learned that you were in this hospital. My sister's eyes flitted over me, and her voice remained gentle. "What ails you? Would you like me to summon Shengwen hither? Why do you feign innocence?" If you truly desire Shen Shengwen to come, simply hand him the phone. Why do you affect naivete here now? Xiao Xiao was on the verge of lunging forward and taking action, but I restrained her. Regrettably, I had underestimated my own strength. Xiao Xiao is an adept boxer. She pushed me aside, rushed forward, and delivered 2 resounding slaps to Su Wan, pointing at her nose and berating her. If you truly felt remorse for Xiao Xiao, would you have permitted your parents to accompany you to the theater during the Chinese New Year, leaving Xiao Xiao to spend the festival alone at home? That time when I took Xiao Xiao to the emergency room due to appendicitis, you were also in the hospital. Yet you tended to your classmate and did not even glance at Xiao Xiao. I celebrate Xiao Xiao's birthday every year. Has anyone in your family ever called or texted her? Do you even know that she had a high fever? It was you who screeched, but she discovered your plans to go abroad. Su Wan, it is your fault for pretending to be a paragon of virtue, yet you still have the temerity to act thus towards your brother-in-law. Ah, I watched Xiao Xiao railing and weeping on my behalf, yet I felt strangely calm in my heart, for I had clearly perceived that there was scarcely any guilt on Su Wan's countenance. Growing up, Su Wan had pretended to hold me in affection in the presence of others, yet had derided me in secret. As a sister, she had once informed me to my face that she detested me. She had not permitted our parents to have a second child, yet they had still given birth to me. Subsequently, Su Wan had been overjoyed because I was also a female. Otherwise, she would not have been able to bask in the undivided love of our parents. She harbors naught but indifference and animosity towards me. I approached and enfolded Xiao Xiao, who was so impassioned and aggrieved on my account, and whispered, "Let us depart." After I departed with Xiao Xiao, my phone was incessantly vibrating. There were calls from colleagues in Shen Shengwen. I declined the calls and then powered off the device. I was momentarily stunned before bursting into laughter. "Fool, why are you laughing?" Xiao Xiao regarded me as she blew her nose. I have discovered for the first time that when Shen Shengwen grew impatient with my calls, it was truly a splendid notion to turn off my phone. In the past, when he treated me thus, I would surmise that he must be occupied outside. I would accept whatever explanation he proffered upon his return. Now that I am the one who has switched off the phone, I comprehend. It transpires that when I do so, I have naught to convey to that person. Uttering even a single additional word would seem a waste of time. Fool, fool, fool. I ought not to have permitted you to marry in such a manner in the first instance. It is all my mother's fault. She had to lend her old abode to relatives, and thus you were ensnared by Shen Shengwen. Xiao Xiao wept more vehemently. I had been courting him for a mere 3 months. Shen Shengwen, aware that I was relocating, suddenly proposed. There was no wedding ring or floral bouquet, yet it assuaged my sense of loss when I was compelled to move. After all, my parents had sold the family house and transferred 10,000 yuan to me for rent. Shen Shengwen's proposal made me believe that I could once again possess a home that would not be sold. I shook my head and declared resolutely, "In truth, I merely yearned so ardently for a family." Now, upon careful reflection, I realized that I was so enamored of Shen Shengwen that I became lost. I had thought that if I endeavored to please him, I could always maintain a relationship and a home with him. As a result, now, aside from the child in my womb, all that Shen Shengwen has bestowed upon me are vestiges of Su Wan, and these traces shall invariably vanish. I also resolved to bear this child and vanish from Shen Shengwen's world. When I entreated Xiao Xiao to accompany me to retrieve my belongings, I took all my bank cards, identification documents, and my erstwhile pristine jeans and shirt. I did not take with me any of the items Shen Shengwen had purchased for me. Regarding the divorce, I directly contacted a lawyer, an old classmate, and beseeched her to assist me in sending the divorce agreement to Shen Shengwen. I requested Xiao Xiao to help me engage an agent, and promptly secured a monthly rental accommodation. I restarted my phone 3 days later. As soon as I powered it on, I beheld the messages Shen Shengwen had sent me. 1. Where are you? 2. I understand your situation. Come back. 3. The child cannot be kept. The optimal course of action for you now is to undergo an abortion, have a uterine evacuation, and identify the focus of the disease and treat it. He is a physician and I am a nurse. We, as husband and wife, are fully cognizant of the general procedure. If I continue in this manner, I shall likely perish before my children reach adulthood. However, I am fated to die regardless. In addition to being in the middle to late stages of pregnancy, I shall not endure for much longer even if I part with the baby. In such a case, I would rather retain the sole opportunity to become a mother in my grasp, not for the sake of anyone else, but simply because I aspire to be a mother to the best of my ability. I have also discovered a living environment for my children in the future. Xiao Xiao's circumstances were exceptional. She had been diagnosed with uterine abnormalities since childhood, and had long since resolved to remain unwed and childless. Thus, Xiao Xiao and I reached an agreement that I would bear a child, and we would rear it together. When I can no longer survive, Xiao Xiao shall take the child to another city and commence a new life. Xiao Xiao adores children and holds me dear as well. Even if I do not survive, Xiao Xiao shall assume my role and accompany the child as it grows. I continued to peruse Shen Shengwen's messages until I beheld the latest one. Su Qiao, your sister has jumped from a building. An afternoon had elapsed since the news. I checked the news but did not see any local report regarding a woman who had jumped from a building and perished. Shen Shengwen's call came through at this juncture, and I answered it. Xiao Qiao, where are you? Have you received the divorce agreement? I inquired. There was a protracted silence on the line before Shen Shengwen spoke in a hoarse voice. I am truly sorry. I was unaware that you were ailing. My illness has no bearing on our divorce. Our divorce is due to the dissolution of our relationship. Thus far, I have ceased to expect anything. I had sought love from Shen Shengwen. Who could truly fall in love with a plaything? Even if this toy had been painstakingly crafted for 3 years, a toy remains a toy. Divorce is the most honorable decision I have made at present. Any further entanglement and abuse shall only impinge upon my physical and mental well-being. Let us set aside our affairs for the moment. You come back first, is that acceptable? Your sister has jumped from a building. Are you not concerned? That day, Chow Chow assaulted your sister in such a manner at the second affiliated hospital, and the incident was recorded on video and disseminated. Your sister was in a dismal state of mind. She felt profoundly guilty and jumped from the building. Xiao Qiao, I implore you to return and permit me to tend to you. I shall never permit anything untoward to befall you again. Shen Shengwen's tone betrayed guilt and self-reproach. But I laughed. Shen Shengwen, are you cognizant of what you have just uttered? There was silence on the other end of the line, evidently taken aback by my rhetorical question. While perusing baby products on the computer, I elucidated to Shen Shengwen. You believe we can defer our affairs. Then you averred that Su Wan's situation was dire, and then you declared that you would attend to me. In truth, you are merely perturbed because Su Wan has jumped from a building. Are you afeared that something shall happen to her? She must have informed you that she desires me to return, is that not so? You too wish for me to return so that you can assuage your consciences and avoid being censured by others. Shen Shengwen, do you truly seek me? Yet you are unable to locate me. Without the filter of love, I find Shen Shengwen's feigned concern utterly ludicrous. If I were truly magnanimous, for the sake of their uneasy consciences, I would return and permit Shen Shengwen to tend to me. I surmise that the less Han giant Buddha would yield its place to me upon beholding me. I was a fool for love, but I have no inclination to be a saint. I terminated the call, but the following day, Chow Chow's parents called me and informed me that Chow Chow had been apprehended. I must truly have been indebted to Su Wan in a previous existence, for I have been manipulated by her throughout my life. When I proceeded to the hospital to seek the person who had called the police, Su Wan, she wept and asseverated that she merely desired to locate me and wanted me, her younger sister, to come and visit her, and thus she had called the police and had Chow Chow arrested. Su Wan insisted on remaining in the ward with the door ajar, weeping and proffering apologies to me. Release them first. I regarded Su Wan's performance with a numb countenance. Su Wan was also overjoyed and promptly called her friend to withdraw the case. Shen Shengwen was beside me, regarding me with concern. Many of my colleagues had congregated outside the ward, and I suddenly grasped the reason for Su Wan's actions. Shen Shengwen is a subject of much discussion in the hospital. If Su Wan can assist him in resolving these discussions, then Shen Shengwen shall feel even more that Su Wan conducts herself with propriety. Shen Shengwen and I are divorcing, but I have discovered that we are ill-suited for each other. When I uttered these words, I espied a proud smile in Su Wan's eyes. However, I do not relish this either. Sister, you dispatched my friend to the police station to compel me to come forward. Could you desist from interfering in our marital affairs? Even if your intentions are good, I shall truly be grateful to you. Su Wan could no longer smile, but Shen Shengwen approached and directly enfolded me in his arms. Wife, I was in error. This was the first occasion upon which I had heard him address me as wife. I regarded his bloodshot eyes and sneered inwardly. I remained immobile, beholding the unwillingness in Su Wan's eyes. She is envious that Shen Shengwen has embraced me as his lawfully wedded wife. I maintained my silence. Is it not merely a matter of awaiting the 2-month divorce cooling-off period? I can endure the wait. I returned to the office with Shen Shengwen and requested that he sign the divorce agreement first, and if he refrained from compelling me to abort the child, I would return with him. Shen Shengwen endeavored several times to dissuade me, but I regarded him coldly and remained silent. In the end, he had no alternative but to nod in assent. Shen Shengwen and I returned home. We did not sleep in separate chambers. I no longer cooked or ironed his clothes. However, Shen Shengwen, as if he had taken an incorrect remedy, began to be solicitous of me and undertook everything himself. That day, Shen Shengwen prepared beef brisket and potatoes, summoned me downstairs to dine, and placed some in my bowl. You used to prepare this frequently. Taste it and ascertain if I have cooked it deliciously. The beef brisket in the bowl glistened with the luster of curry. It did not resemble a dish that a novice cook could concoct. I am allergic to beef, I said calmly as I consumed the fried vegetables. Shen Shengwen was dumbfounded. I continued eating. Su Wan is fond of beef. Since our marriage, you averred that you only consume beef, and thus I prepared it. However, Shen Shengwen had never noticed that I had not partaken of a single morsel of beef. I shall prepare something else for you. Observing him rise in a panic and hasten to the kitchen, I placed my chopsticks down, shook my head and said, Nay, I have a stomachache and am unable to eat. Shen Shengwen was in the kitchen. He stood at the door with his head lowered. For the first time he had lost his pride in my presence. As dejected as a large hound, I returned to my room and commenced experiencing lower abdominal pain in the middle of the night. I noticed that I had light bleeding and a frequent urge to urinate. Shen Shengwen heard the commotion and rushed in to attend to me nervously. Initially, I resisted for a while, but subsequently I could no longer endure, and the child in my womb was his, so why should I afford him an easy time? Thus I exerted myself. In a mere half a month I had lost 12 pounds. Shen Shengwen had lost 8 pounds. After his parents learned of my situation, they began to call Shen Shengwen frequently, imploring him to divorce me. I was dining with relish and overheard my mother-in-law shouting excitedly on the other end of the phone, She shall bring you down. She refuses to abort the child and receive conservative treatment. By then, she and the child shall likely perish. Are you intent on embroiling us in trouble? Have you ever contemplated what we, the elderly couple, shall do? Shen Shengwen regarded my direction and said calmly, I shall manage my own affairs. He walked back and touched my bowl. Permit me to ladle you another bowl of porridge. This bowl has grown cold. I was unable to eat. However, beholding my abdomen, which was commencing to swell, I managed to consume less than half a bowl. But within half an hour, I hastened to the toilet and vomited profusely. Observing the fastidious Shun Shengwen assist me in cleaning the toilet, I drank some water and said, "Thank you." Shun Shengwen's back stiffened, and he turned back to regard me with inscrutable eyes. "Xiao Qiao, we are husband and wife. You need not be so courteous. However, we are divorcing. There is but 1 month remaining." I touched my abdomen and regarded him. The veins on Shun Shengwen's forehead were pulsating, and thus I pivoted and ascended the stairs. I could clearly perceive the regret and self-reproach on his countenance now. He regarded my abdomen and commenced to grow apprehensive. He hopes to utilize the child to mollify me. However, I am also afeared that if I am with child, I shall truly perish. Shun Shengwen, the pride of heaven, has also begun to dread harming his surrogate. I commenced taking anti-cancer medications that would not adversely affect the babe in my womb. My colleagues in the hospital evinced great concern for me. Female colleagues would even disclose to me that after Shun Shengwen prevailed upon me to return home, he engaged a caregiver for Suwan. Unless I chanced to pass by during a house inspection, I never visited Suwan once. The head nurse shook her head and informed me that there were other physicians in the hospital who were wooing Suwan. I smiled. Suwan had been thus since her childhood. There were numerous individuals who held her in affection. When Shun Shengwen came to collect me, others were jesting. He had hitherto always maintained a solemn countenance and never engaged in banter with the female nurses. However, of late, he would smile and express gratitude to my colleagues for attending to me. He learned to procure milk tea for colleagues who were on amicable terms with me. The venerable director regarded me, who was so emaciated, and patted Shun Shengwen on the shoulder. "Tend to Xiao Qiao with diligence. If you are at a loss, simply call me." When I heard this, I smiled and inquired, "Is it because my condition has deteriorated?" The old director shook his head in negation. I regarded Shun Shengwen and politely requested, "Could you show me my medical records and examination sheets? I am desirous of knowing my condition." In the past, Mr. Shun was wont to demur, citing impropriety and inappropriateness. However, now, as long as I fixed my gaze upon him for a while, he would invariably comply with my wishes in silence. I mused to myself that perhaps this was the prerogative of one with a short life expectancy. I perused the examination data, and it was far from satisfactory. My uterus was already attenuated, which accounted for my inability to conceive for so many years. Now the child had augmented my burden, and the lesions were commencing to pose a risk of infection. Shun Shengwen insisted on clasping my hand and entering the vehicle. We sat in the car. He remained seated there for half an hour without even departing from the parking lot. When he turned his head and addressed me, I beheld his bloodshot eyes. "Xiao Qiao, I truly realized that I was in error. I beseech you to afford me an opportunity. Let us abort the child and undergo an operation. Is that acceptable?" I shook my head with equanimity, cradled my belly and said, "Shengwen, regardless of whether this child lives or perishes, I am fated to die. I would rather permit him to live." Shun Shengwen reclined upon the steering wheel and remained motionless. That day, Shun Shengwen did not convey me home until I beheld the resplendent sunset. The head nurse summoned me and apprised me that my parents had come to visit Suwan. I was in the vicinity of the hospital when they commenced arguing. I had not intended to go there to witness the altercation, but I had experienced bleeding again last night. Shun Shengwen had been adamant about sleeping on the floor with a quilt and keeping vigil over me. We had made an arrangement, and he would proceed there in the afternoon to conduct another examination on me. When I arrived at the hospital, I surmised that Suwan must have mollified her parents. After all, Suwan was so articulate and had such an amicable rapport with her parents. Even if there was a quarrel, there would indubitably be a reconciliation in the end. I had not anticipated that they were still disputing. When the head nurse and I traversed Suwan's ward, we overheard my mother's vociferous roar emanating from within. "You are divorced, so how can we remain abroad? You have not even given thought to your father and me. We toiled arduously to extricate you from the countryside. Is this how you recompense us now? We are not as prosperous as before. Consider Su Qiao. At least she will not divorce like you." I discerned a modicum of embarrassment on the head nurse's visage and shrugged nonchalantly. "It is of no consequence. This should be the first occasion upon which I have been commended by my parents. Although I shall still divorce." Suwan was also emotionally distraught. "You do not care about me in the slightest. All you desire is for me to obtain certificates and bonuses. I was beaten until I miscarried. If I did not flee back to China, Aiska would have beaten me to death. I was in a trance. I recollected that when I first encountered Suwan, she was beaming with pride. However, she did seem to have bruises on her wrists. It transpires that her marriage abroad was unhappy. I will not return. I must divorce him. I aspire to commence anew in China." Before Suwan could conclude her remarks, I heard applause. My father shouted at Suwan, "You promised us to emigrate for our retirement. Is this how you requite your parents now? Do not forget that we bestowed upon you all the proceeds from the sale of the house. So what? You invested in Esker of your own volition. If you wish to remain abroad and gaze at the moon, then you must devise a solution yourself. Nay, you do not love me at all. I am not a son. When I was a child, I fractured my bones, and you were loath to convey me to the doctor. The reason you were so benevolent towards me was on account of my achievements. Were it not for my arduous efforts, I would not be as I am. I would be like that simpleton Su Qiao. I would be left to my own devices in the countryside as a burden. I informed you that Su Qiao has cancer, but did you make a single phone call? You are the most self-centered parents in the world. As a parent, I abhor you. I will never again submit to your control, let alone return. When Soo-won bolted from the room, I beheld 3 astonished countenances. Soo-won was mortified. This was the first occasion upon which she had appeared so discomfited in my presence. My parents were also abashed. They merely stood in the ward and regarded me. My mother promptly averted her gaze the instant she espied me. My father regarded me and moved his lips, but I did not hear any sound. However, I surmised that he should have called me Su Chow, a name that was more alien than that of a colleague. Let us depart. The head nurse grasped my hand and endeavored to lead me away and said indignantly, "Do not be aggrieved. Some individuals are not fated to be good parents. You are faring well now, and it is all due to your own merit." The head nurse was apprehensive that I would be ensnared by my parents, and that my impecunious parents would turn around and solicit money from me. After all, they had just averred that they had bestowed all the money upon Soo-won. I took 2 steps and my hand was suddenly clasped. Soo-won seized my hand and approached me with a somewhat ferocious mien. "Su Chow, do you not reproach them?" Resentment? During my adolescence, when I experienced my first menses and no one instructed me, I was resentful at that time. When I was trailed by a pervert and fled home, only to discover that my family had been sold, I was also aggrieved at that time. When I was ailing and required an intravenous drip in the hospital, and no one signed for the surgery, I felt aggrieved. However, now I have not long to live. I have no desire to set eyes upon my parents again. This is the most significant matter I have relinquished. This is your affair. Do not involve me. I endeavored to extricate my hand, but Soo-won held it tenaciously. The head nurse assisted me in prying Soo-won's hand open and said impatiently, "Xiao Chow is in a parlous state of health. Could you desist from tormenting her in this manner? Are you her sister? Can you not perceive that she is presently enfeebled? She is in a parlous state of health. She is in a parlous state of health. How can I be well?" Soo-won's shattered emotions burst through the dam. It seems that with my existence, her sense of comparison has been kindled. She clutched me and refused to release me. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she shook me vigorously. "Su Chow, at least you have grandmother to prepare eggs for you. You are not compelled to rise at 4 o'clock every day to practice dancing and partake in commercial performances in winter. You can at least select the university of your preference to attend, and at least you will not be beaten by your husband until you miscarry." When I miscarried and fled home to seek my parents, do you know that they promptly called Iska? They are solely concerned with their investment and are indifferent to the fact that I was still bleeding. How can you not reproach them? Why do you not reproach them? You ought to be like me. Detest them for being unqualified parents. Abhor their ruthlessness and perfidy. Release me, I said coldly. Soo-won merely wept, clutching me and ceaselessly shaking me to pose questions, as if she were desirous of eliciting an answer from me. The parents in the room finally hastened out, desiring Soo-won to desist from speaking and cease embarrassing herself. Amid their disputation, I was rescued by Shun Shun-gwen. He materialized like a deus ex machina, dispelling all the constraints and entanglements that beset me. "Su Chow, when you were ailing, Shun Shun-gwen was attending to me, but we truly had no untoward relationship. I was truly desperate at the time. Why could you not comprehend me? I have been in the company of my parents for so many years. Could you not assume the care of them?" Soo-won wept copiously, as touching as a rain-soaked pear blossom. I beheld several men, all subconsciously glancing in her direction. However, Shun Shun-gwen grasped my hand and led me towards his office. My parents suddenly caught up with us. "Shun-gwen, is Su Chow's condition truly dire? Otherwise, could you assist us with the formalities so that we can return to tend to her?" Shun Shun-gwen did not halt until we reached the office, and he permitted me to enter alone. I am ignorant of what he said to my parents, and he was the sole individual who returned to seek me. I espied a slap mark on his visage and refrained from inquiring further. After the examination, Shun Shun-gwen exhaled a sigh of relief. "The child is developing favorably, and the cancer cells have not metastasized. Then let us proceed with the divorce formalities tomorrow." I regarded Shun Shun-gwen inquisitively. He was stunned for an extended period before speaking hoarsely. "Truly, can you not forgive me? I have discovered that as long as individuals are cognizant that their days are numbered, they will truly become magnanimous and relinquish. There is no question of forgiveness or not. I was enamored of you previously, but now I truly have no affection for you. Now this child I aspire to rear it with Chow Chow. You are still youthful, and there is no child to encumber you. You can remarry." Shun Shun-gwen is a man of excellent circumstances, possessing a vehicle, a dwelling and a high-paying occupation. I surmise that the day after our divorce, my mother-in-law will arrange a blind date for Shun Shun-gwen. Shun Shun-gwen grasped my hand, lowered his head, and suddenly inclined his head against my belly. His low voice seemed to be murmuring, "Truly, must we divorce?" I felt the dampness of tears on my skirt. I touched Shun Shun-gwen's head, and the corners of my mouth lifted slightly. He may have fallen in love with me. He has lost the wager that he would cause me to change my mind within 2 months. However, belated affection is more worthless than grass. Now, I will not afford him the opportunity to attend to me. Let us divorce. It is advanced stage cancer. I have not much time remaining. I desire to live my life according to my own wishes before I depart. Is that acceptable?" Shun Shun-gwen assented after a protracted interval. "My wife has divorced me. Never had I conceived that she would possess the metal to sever our matrimonial bond. Her name is Su Chow, and she bears a striking resemblance to my first love, the goddess of my heart." Subsequently, I discovered that they were, in truth, sisters. The sole disparity lay in the fact that one was a celestial dancer on the cusp of the white clouds, while the other was a timorous and pusillanimous little white rabbit. I beheld with my own eyes Su Qiao's homelessness, and the tenderness within my heart was stirred. A fleeting thought coursed through my mind that it would be an ineffably comfortable existence were I to be in her company. Thus I espoused her. I did not mind in the least that her parents did not grace our nuptials, nor did I mind that she was not highly educated and had naught in common with me. I merely yearned to behold the goddess through her visage. Later, the goddess returned to the motherland, and I personally attended to her. I was cognizant in the depths of my heart that I had wronged Su Qiao. However, I had presumed that she was so compliant and docile that she ought to be capable of tolerating all my foibles. When I learned that Su Qiao was afflicted with cancer, I knew that she was resolute in her determination to divorce. I realized that when I had made the decision to wed, I had been unwittingly drawn to Su Qiao. She averred that she desired to live out her remaining days in bliss. I suddenly apprehended that I did not even possess the wherewithal to retain her. After the divorce, whenever I beheld the kitchen, thoughts of her would assail me. When I glimpsed a shirt, she would come to mind. When I witnessed others in mirth, I would be reminded of her. When the goddess Su Wan dispatched her self-portrait to me, I was astounded to discover that Su Qiao and Su Wan were not in the least alike. I had been deluding myself all along. I did not require any visual stimuli. My mind was perpetually preoccupied with Su Qiao. I mused that, in fact, I had already fallen in love with Su Qiao, who was as gentle and soothing as warm water. I yearned to atone for the profound love I had squandered, and thus I commenced poring over Su Qiao's reports on a daily basis, and even presented them to my mentors and foreign specialists. Alas, it was too late. Su Qiao desired naught from me save for my assistance in her medical treatment. I beheld her protruding belly and the internal bleeding that ensued, and my heart was rent asunder. Observing her inability to partake of sustenance, I would squat beside the bed with a bowl of porridge and implore her to take a sip, yet she would merely shake her head with indifference. I wept aloud when I witnessed her hemorrhaging profusely during childbirth, her life teetering on the precipice. I finally grasped the enormity of the cruelty I had inflicted upon Su Qiao when she had been enamored of me, and I had scarcely deigned to cast a second glance in her direction. For now, I feel as if a lump were perpetually lodged in my throat, yet I am impotent to express my love for her. I believe this to be God's retribution upon me. My bosom friend Xiao Qiao is the individual to whom I am most indebted in this life. She tended to me unreservedly for 3 years, yet I still reneged on my promise and was unable to accompany her until the day when her teeth would tumble out. I, Su Qiao, passed away in the autumnal season of my 31st year. The leaves were a vivid shade of yellow, as were the sunset clouds. My son is 3 years of age and is capable of addressing me as Mom. I beseech that he may experience happiness every day in the future. My name is Zhang Tianla. I am 7 years of age this year and shall commence elementary school in September. My biological mother is Su Qiao, and my godmother is Zhang Qiao. I reside with my godmother. I inquired of my godmother as to why my surname differed from that of my parents and was the same as hers. My godmother replied that it was because the Su family was ill-fated and the Shen family was unworthy. I am fortunate, for I am able to bear her surname Zhang. There are children in the kindergarten who deride me for lacking a father and a mother. However, that is not the case. My father is a physician. Each time he endeavors to collect me to partake in play, I would overhear him beseeching my godmother for assistance. My godmother has a tempestuous temper and would berate my father. However, my godmother is exceedingly kind to me and is a paragon of virtue. I surmise that my father must have committed some transgression in the past, which accounts for my godmother's antipathy towards him. My father escorts me to visit my mother annually. I point to the photograph and query my father, "Is Mom slumbering therein?" My father would caress my pate and affirm, "Will Mom behold me?" My father would respond in the affirmative. I retrieved the little red flower stickers I had amassed in kindergarten and affixed them around my mother's photograph. "Dad, will Mom be overjoyed to behold my little red flowers? Because I have been exceedingly good, right?" Dad's eyes abruptly reddened. He crouched down and enfolded me in his arms, saying, "Your mother was an exceptionally good person. She would not love you contingent upon your behavior. Her love for you is unconditional. So is Dad's." The end of the full text.